Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Chapter 31. Although Magneto is a strong man who has been famous for a long time, he is already old after all. Under Lu Yu's unprepared attack, he was hit in the face by Lu Yu's fist, and the muscles in his face were instantly sunken like meat. As he fell down, the sound of broken bones was heard. Lu Yu was unyielding, and when Magneto's body fell back under the huge amounts of inertia due to his attack, he kicked Magneto hard in the stomach. Magneto spurted a mouthful of blood. His body was kicked backwards by Lu Yu's terrifying force, and he finally stopped after hitting a ginkgo tree. The leaves on the tree were knocked down on Magneto, making him look very embarrassed. "How's it going? Did it surprise you?" Lu Yu took the opportunity to bully him, but Magneto's reaction speed was not slow either. Although his mind had been knocked unconscious by Lu Yu, he still stretched out a hand and used his ability. The motorcycle parked on the side of the road suddenly floated into the air, roaring through the air, and hit Lu Yu hard over the stunned little naughty boy. Lu Yu felt the noise behind him. At this time, it was too late to elementalize. He had to decisively give up his plan to continue attacking Magneto, and dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding the vicious attack that followed. This is Magneto's angry blow, and its power is naturally amazing. The motorcycle hit the place where Lu Yu had been staying, creating a hole more than 2 meters wide in the ground. In an instant, dust flew. The soil splashed into the air, leaving a unique smell of soil in the air. After dodging to the side and regaining his balance, Lu Yu continued the attack without haste. He knew that the distance between the two sides was now wide, and if he rushed forward rashly, it would not have a good effect. Looking at the big pit on the ground, Lu Yu couldn't help but smacked his lips. It seemed that he had really set Magneto off. But that's right, if someone suddenly attacks you while you're showing off, no matter who it is, it's impossible not to become angry. Very good, no matter what kind of secret you have. Magneto stood up tremblingly, holding on to the ginkgo tree, and wiped away the blood that spilled from the corner of his mouth with his hands. If you dare to sneak attack a king, you will pay the price with your life for this. His eyes were full of blazing anger, as if he was going to cut Lu Yu into pieces in the next moment. The metal components of the motorcycle body began to twist and shapeshift, like molten iron that melted into liquid, flowing on the ground to form more than a dozen 1-meter-long steel spears. "As a gift to you as a mutant, I allow you to leave a last word." The spear floated in front of Magneto. The tip pointed straight at Lu Yu, flashing with cold metallic light, and the sinister aura was threatening. At this moment, the atmosphere between Lu Yu and Magneto was extremely solemn. "Stay away, little naughty." Facing a battle with a strong man of Magneto's level, Lu Yu did not dare to be careless. He turned around and reminded the little naughty, "It is best to run as far as possible." "But, you..." Although the little naughty girl was scared, she was more worried about Lu Yu's safety. Looking at the iron spear pointed at Lu Yu in front of Magneto, she almost shed tears. "It's nothing, you just need to believe me." Lu Yu sounded confident as if he didn't know he was in danger. This time was his first real fight without any scruples. He could feel something in his heart wanting to come out. The shadow that had been getting farther and farther away from him in his dreams was now constantly coming towards him. He approaches. "Prince, if anything happens to you because of me, I will go down and accompany you." The little naughty boy knew that he had no fighting ability, and staying would only become a burden to Lu Yu in battle. She took a deep look at Lu Yu, chose to obey Lu Yu's words, and ran away. It's a very touching scene. Wan Si had a sarcastic smile on his face and clapped his hands vigorously and said, "What is this called?" The warrior bravely sacrificed his life in order to buy the princess time to escape. "Actually, I plan to keep you for my use. Your ability is very good, but it's a pity that you don't know how to appreciate it." Magneto shook his head regretfully. He spoke slowly, not worried at all that the little naughty man could escape from his grasp. The place he chose was deserted, far away from the city or Xavier's school. "I think this should be a story about a warrior saving a princess and slaying a demon," Lu Yu said in a pretending helpless tone. "You have to know that you can't kill me. I hope you can continue to be so arrogant and never kneel down and beg me for mercy." Magneto sneered and slowly raised his right hand. He didn't understand the meaning of Lu Yu's words and just thought that Lu Yu was talking nonsense. He has lost his patience and can't wait to end the weak life of the person in front of him. I should have said this. It's taboo to steal the protagonist's lines. Lu Yu raised his hands to the left and right, and then there was a rumbling sound on the yellow ground, like thousands of troops. The horse galloped past, and the entire ground began to shake violently. When Magneto saw the earth moving, he didn't hesitate at all. He raised his hand and waved down. More than a dozen steel spears were like bows and arrows that had been separated from the string, carrying the force of thunder, and shooting towards Lu Yu rapidly. The battle is about to break out. Chapter 32. From the mysterious disc, Lu Yu inherited the power of Anubis, the death god in Egyptian mythology. Anubis is the lord of the desert, the god between dawn and darkness, and the supreme being who controls the underworld and death. The yellow sand in the desert is a symbol of the end of all things, and it is also a manifestation of the power of the death god. Death god Anubis can not only control them, but also create them. Where death comes, everything fades away. As the successor to the power of Anubis, Lu Yu exercises divine power and can corrupt everything into dust. The large amount of soil on the ground is the best raw material for him to make yellow sand. A large amount of yellow sand sweeps from the ground to the sky, forming huge amounts of sandstorm, blocking the sunlight in the sky, as if it wants to swallow the entire sky. The trees around Lu Yu's body were all uprooted by the sandstorm, with leaves and branches flying everywhere, and debris dancing in the sky. In front of this miraculous sight, the metal sphere controlled by Magneto was like a firefly comparing its light with the sun and the moon. It was helplessly bounced to the side by the centrifugal force of the huge amounts of sandstorm, and was unable to cause any harm to Lu Yu. Standing in the center of the storm, at this moment Lu Yu is like a god coming to the dust, gazing at the world. How is it possible? How can you develop your ability to this extent when you are only over 10 years old? The dust in the sky hurt his skin, so Magneto covered his face with his cloak. He controlled the magnetic field around his body to prevent his body from being sucked into the sandstorm. Your mouse friends call me Dun God. I've got to be a little Dun God, right? Lu Yu walked towards Magneto saunteringly, gray light flashing in his eyes, getting brighter and brighter. As Lu Yu moved, the sandstorm began to slowly approach Magneto. The movement of the storm made a roar that shook the earth, leaving a mess wherever it passed. Although Magneto was shocked by Lu Yu's strength, he did not panic too much. He raised his hands while retreating. You are really capable. I believe that if you are given time, you will be able to surpass me and Charles. Magneto said to Lu Yu with a look of pity, but you should never offend someone. The majesty of a king. Only by reluctantly killing you can I maintain the order and law of the mutant empire in the future. Mutant empire? Are you having a sweet dream? A gray light flashed in Lu Yu's eyes, and the sandstorm in front of him roared towards Magneto. Or did you forget to take your medicine when you went out this morning? You can't see the future with your short sight. But I can see it. After I win this war, the future of the world will belong to mutant. Magneto said to Lu Yu with an arrogant expression. Countless metal products suddenly flew out from all corners, including street lights, cars, and even some abandoned household appliances. They gathered in front of Magneto, and under the control of Magneto ability, a new storm was formed, a metal storm. Comparable in scale to the sandstorm created by Lu Yu. With the violent collision of the sandstorm and the metal storm, a violent airwave spread in all directions. The lawn on the ground in the distance was completely destroyed in an instant, and no trace of green could be seen anymore. The confrontation between the two storms made a deafening noise, and birds even fell from the sky amid the howling wind. This is a shocking picture of man-made manipulation of nature. Do you think you can win the war and rule the earth by using that failed garbage machine and sending out a few random rays? Lu Yu raised his head and said with a sarcastic expression, you think you can become the new king of this world? It's so ridiculous. You have no idea how vast this world is, and how many people stronger than you are lurking. Your every move is within their anticipation and monitoring. The scene was in a stalemate. Lu Yu's legs suddenly exerted force, and his body was launched like a cannonball, and he rushed towards Magneto. Transcendent, observer, have you heard of these? I cannot see all the future clearly, but I am sure that I have seen your future. Lu Yu punched out. The gray light in his eyes was as bright as the stars. His fist was as fierce as a tiger and as heavy as an ox, and he hit Magneto's face hard. Magneto was already alert. Before Lu Yu could reach him, the metal that had been reserved around his body began to gather and change rapidly. Finally, they merged into one, forming a huge shield about 10 centimeters thick. blocking him. In front of him, Lu Yu's fist hit the metal shield with a force as powerful as a bull, causing the metal shield to tremble continuously. The place where Lu Yu's fist hit was instantly dented into a large area, leaving only a small gap. It can be penetrated directly with just one point. Today, I will bury you with my own hands. In the future, you will only exist in history. The majestic power gathered again, and Lu Yu punched out again. His eyes were completely filled with gray, and his voice was extremely cold, with an aura like that of hell, which made people feel despair. Chapter 33, How strong is Lu Yu's body? Let's put it this way, Captain America can lift something weighing about half a ton and can generate explosive power several times greater than this data. And Lu Yu's physical fitness is 10 times that of Captain America? Although Lu Yu could not fully grasp and utilize such a terrifying physical quality at ordinary times, at this moment when his divinity emerged, he could make full use of it. Each punch was a full-strength blow, landing heavily with great force. Under such a high-intensity attack from Lu Yu, Magneto soon became unable to withstand it. At the critical moment, Magneto caught the moment Lu Yu raised his fist, opened and released his right hand, and the damaged shield in front of him disintegrated in an instant, turning into hundreds of file-sized blades. The blade cut through the air, making a whining sound. The surface of the blade shone with a heart-stopping metallic cold light, and flew quickly towards Lu Yu. Lu Yu's pupils shrank, and his body instantly entered elemental form. The blade penetrated into Lu Yu's body made of yellow sand. Although it did not cause any harm to him, it did not penetrate as Lu Yu imagined, but stayed in his body of yellow sand. Lu Yu was about to repel these blades from his body when Magneto suddenly sneered and said, "Do you think I didn't expect this move of yours?" As soon as Magneto finished speaking, hundreds of blades suddenly began to rotate in Lu Yu's body at the same time, just like hundreds of blenders starting at the same time, breaking up the yellow sand that made up Lu Yu's body in an instant. The scattered yellow sand tried to regroup under an invisible force, but before they could gather together, they would be scattered again by the blade controlled by Magneto. No matter where the yellow sand floats, blade will always follow. There is no way for Lu Yu to escape from this endless cycle and regain her human form. Even if you transform your body into an element, you won't be able to consume it at all. Magneto exhaled heavily. The pressure Lu Yu put on him was too great. Just wait for your mental power to run out and do a lot of things forever. Sand it. As time passed, Magneto watched the sandstorm fighting against the metal storm he controlled dissipate little by little, with a victorious smile on his face. The yellow sand transformed by Lu Yu in the air no longer tries to aggregate, but floats unconsciously in the air as if it had turned into real dust. This is the fate of being my enemy. Magneto put away his ability, took out a glove from his clothes, put it on his hand, and turned around to leave. He didn't know that in his invisible field of vision, traces of black aura appeared from the void and penetrated into the yellow sand in the air. The color of the yellow sand slowly turned into black at a speed invisible to the naked eye. Magneto thought Lu Yu was dead, so he lowered his guard and prepared to catch the little naughty man and then implement his plan to transform the head of state. "Sorry, can you repeat what you just said?" Lu Yu's joking voice suddenly came from behind Magneto. Magneto turned around in shock. Countless black dust in the air gathered in front of him and turned into a black human-shaped shadow. Before he could react, the shadow reached out and grabbed his neck and lifted him into the air. "Even if the battle is over, we can't let down our guard. It seems that you, the former vice principal of Xavier's school, don't understand this." Various colors kept emerging from the black shadow, and finally slowly turned into a fleshy state. Lu Yu said, "I don't think you should leave school. At least you can still learn this knowledge. What do you think? You are pretending to be dead to deceive me." Magneto was lifted in the air by Lu Yu, struggling to look at Lu Yu with disbelieving eyes. "No way, I have obviously killed you. I can feel it." Lu Yu's eyes had turned pure gray, and there seemed to be mist rolling in between them, and the souls of the dead were wailing, and Magneto Wong could feel a kind of coldness that froze his soul. A small stream of black aura that ordinary people couldn't see separated from Lu Yu's body and wrapped around Lu Yu's hand holding Magneto. Such majestic power. Magneto's face began to slowly wither and age, and his eyes were filled with endless fear. "What on earth are you, a monster? Didn't I tell you? You can call me Desert Tyrant." Lu Yu chuckled, but his tone was full of indifference. with a chill of contempt for all living beings, or you can call me another name. Death God. The force on Liu Yu's hand became heavier and heavier, making it increasingly difficult for Magneto to breathe. As his face withered faster, blue blood vessels began to appear, and the aging part slowly spread from his face to his whole body. Magneto used his last bit of strength to control the metal scattered on the ground behind Liu Yu, making them float and crash into Liu Yu. The air was cut by the metal, making a buzzing sound. Countless metals fell towards Liu Yu like fire and meteors. But at this moment, something happened that made Magneto desperate. As the last metal he relied on, it began to rust and corrode rapidly before it reached Liu Yu, and finally turned into an embryo of dust and fell to the ground. As you said, I am indeed a god above all living beings. Liu Yu looked at Magneto as if nothing had happened and said in a very regretful tone, but unfortunately, you are not. Magneto's eyeballs began to bulge, and his eyes slowly became blurry. His raised hands were like withered bones, falling weakly to both sides of his body, and his entire body was constantly being corrupted by death. Look, this is what will happen to you if I am your enemy. Liu Yu's eyes were indifferent and his voice was soft, as if he was telling an insignificant matter. How dare you to provoke a god? As Magneto's chest stopped rising and falling, his body turned into a mummy. This mutant who calls himself a king, the leader of the Brotherhood, should be able to stir up troubles in the future. Just fall? People killed by the death god can neither go to heaven nor hell. Their souls will suffer forever in the kingdom of death. Chapter 34. In the principal's office of Xavier's school, Charles looked at Liu Yu with a complicated expression and asked, "Did you kill Eric?" Liu Yu looked at Charles very calmly, and he nodded slowly. "He wants to kill me and capture the little naughty guy. How is this possible? Magneto is one of the strongest mutants in the 4th level." Jean Grey stood next to Charles with a look of disbelief on her face. "How can you beat him?" In her opinion, although Liu Yu has many abilities and has regenerative healing factor, Liu Yu's attack methods are very rough and single. As long as they are slightly familiar with it, X-Men like her can remain invincible and even find opportunities to fight back, not to mention Magneto, a peak powerhouse with rich combat experience. Just yesterday, Ororo only used a little trick to let Liu Yu fall into the trap. How could Liu Yu win Magneto? A gray light flashed in Liu Yu's eyes, and it disappeared briefly. The speed was so fast that neither Jean Grey nor Charles could notice it. In the elemental state, Magneto took the opportunity to continuously consume his mental power. Liu Yu actually fell into a deep sleep in the end. His body dissipated into the world, and his soul and mind entered a desolate world, constantly looking for a way out. The ground there was covered with black soil, exuding a rotten smell unique to blood. The black tide is constantly flowing on the ground, and the underworld fire is surging on it. The sky was covered in gray, wails of pain were heard from all directions, and the whole world was filled with a strong aura of death. This is the real underworld of the dead, a place where souls rest forever. "Here, come here, I'm here." A weak hoarse voice sounded in Liu Yu's heart, prompting Liu Yu to follow the call in his heart and keep searching. There is no concept of time in the underworld, and Liu Yu didn't know how long he had been walking until he saw a pale throne built of countless skulls. Behind the pale throne, there is a skeletal gate across the sky standing there, as if it has existed since eternity, exuding an aura of long-lasting desolation. The shocking bodies of 12 unknown giant beasts were paved with 12 huge amounts of stairs, and the pale throne was placed at the top of the stairs. The black shadow that once appeared in Liu Yu's dream was sitting on the throne, with his head lowered as if staring at Liu Yu, as if waiting for endless years for someone to finally come close to me. Liu Yu walked up the stairs and came to the throne. He couldn't help but feel a strong affinity for the black shadow in his heart. He could feel that he had a very deep connection with the black shadow. "Who are you?" Liu Yu slowly stretched out his hand, carefully trying to touch the black shadow, and he longed to do so in his heart. I am. The black shadow also reached out and touched Liu Yu's hand. Liu Yu found that he could gradually see the appearance of the black shadow clearly, and it was actually the same as himself. "I am your godhead." The huge skeleton door that covered the sky suddenly opened, revealing the vibrant and bright world behind it, the pinnacle of alpha level. Liu Yu glanced at Jean Grey and indicated that she knew Magneto's level. As long as you seize the opportunity, Magneto is nothing more than a mortal body. Lu Yu didn't intend to explain in detail how he won. After seeing Magneto's various precautions against him, he understood the truth. No matter what the situation is, people must leave themselves some trump cards that others don't know, so as to avoid putting themselves in a very disadvantageous situation in the future to the greatest extent. Before Jean Grey could finish her words, Charles raised his hand and interrupted her. Eric and I have been friends for many years. Many years ago we came together because of our shared ideals and co-founded this school. Are you working together for mutants' living environment? Lu Yu snatched Charles's words. With all due respect, when I faced Magneto, I only saw a crazy old man who would do anything for power and desire. Over the years, he has indeed become more and more extreme and has lost our original intention. Charles closed his eyes and rubbed his temples, saying in a sad tone, "Perhaps dying like this is not a good thing for him." A relief. "You don't blame me for killing someone, and I'm still your old friend." Lu Yu was a little surprised. He always thought that Charles would blame him for killing his old friend. Yeah, that's right, old fag. Lu Yu has always felt that Charles and Magneto must have had a PY deal when they were young, which is why they have spent their lives loving and hating each other. Maybe their PY process was wonderful, but in the end they had a dispute over how much they should pay. "I never taught you not to kill. In fact, we will kill the people who deserve to be killed." Charles didn't know what Lu Yu was thinking, otherwise he wouldn't be looking at Lu Yu as kindly as he is now. Eric has no cure. Save, he tried to drag everyone in the world into the war he wanted. Your act of killing him not only saved the little naughty man, but also saved more people. No one has the right to condemn you. You put it like that, I feel like a superhero. Lu Yu's expression looked a little cynical. I defeated the evil villain and then saved the Earth. When Lu Yu said this, Jean Grey suddenly thought of something, frowned and asked, "Do you have Magneto's helmet that can block mental interference? Are you talking about this?" Lu Yu picked up the cardboard box he brought back from the sofa and took out the brown helmet inside. It was the one Magneto was wearing. "It's my trophy. I'm not turning it in. No one wants to take it from you, kid. We just don't want it to fall into the hands of some conspirators." Charles looked at the helmet Lu Yu took out, his eyes full of nostalgia. "This is the first time that Eric and I have." Eric got it from Xiao, the creator of Hellfire, while fighting side by side. Eric killed Xiao and took this helmet. And you killed Eric and got this helmet from him. Charles stared closely at the brown helmet in Lu Yu's hand and said in a worried tone, "It's almost like the old days are happening all over again. I hope you can escape this spell and not make the same mistakes they made. Don't compare me with those two outdated old guys. I'm different from them." Lu Yu threw the helmet into the sky. When the helmet fell back into his hand, he put it on casually. The head asked, "Like this, can you still talk in my head?" "I think it's no longer possible." Charles said to Lu Yu, earnestly, "Use it well. It shouldn't just exist as an armor for demons to protect themselves." Lu Yu raised his eyebrows non-committally and said, "In my case, it is not the devil's armor, but it will definitely not become Angel's holy shield." Charles suddenly smiled happily. "Congratulations, you can graduate." Chapter 35, Thick heavy metal music, colorful and chaotic lights, plus men and women in thin clothes everywhere, shaking their heads. Some men and women have even begun to hug each other, exchange saliva, and engage in unspeakable things in the corner. The air everywhere is filled with a rotten smell. No matter what era it is in, bars always look like this, indulgent and crazy. This is a very high-end bar in the center of New York City. If you want to spend a night here, even if you don't need any other special services, you can just drink a few glasses of ordinary wine without spending $5,000 or $6,000. The people who can come here to spend money are all the most elite white-collar workers in New York, executives from various companies, or the second generation of wealthy businessmen and senior officials. Definitely, there is another kind of person. That is, maybe his family is not rich, but he thinks he is very beautiful and wants to get married to a rich woman here. Handsome guy, alone. Lu Yu, who graduated from Xavier's school, was sitting at the bar, staring at a glass of cocktail in his hand in a daze, when suddenly someone tapped him on the shoulder. Lu Yu turned around, and saw a fair-skinned, slim-figured blonde girl smiling charmingly at him. Her bright red lips made her look extra sexy. "That headdress on your head is really unique." The blonde naturally sat next to Lu Yu. It's like cosplay or something. Lu Yu was not surprised when a beautiful woman came up to chat with him. As a handsome guy, Lu Yu has encountered this kind of thing countless times in places like bars. Although Lu Yu has no interest in these warblers and swallows, but he still maintained what he thought was a good gentleman's demeanor. I just finished playing a superhero who saves the world, and this is my trophy. You are so funny. The blonde covered her mouth and laughed. Are you an actor? In this world, everyone is an actor in their own life. Lu Yu did not directly answer the blonde's words, but said speciously. He didn't want to sleep with this woman, so he didn't have time to explain to her in detail how he fought against Magneto and finally killed Magneto on the spot. And even if he did, others might still regard Lu Yu as a lunatic. Why don't you take it off? The blonde didn't dwell too much on the issue of Lu Yu's occupation. She knew that there would be no paupers who could spend money here. Her hand pretended to be casually placed on Lu Yu's palm. Don't you think it will affect some of the interesting things that follow? This is my new toy, although it looks a bit nondescript. Lu Yu took his hand out of the blonde's hand and picked up the wine glass, but I don't plan to take it off yet. After wearing this helmet at Xavier's school, Lu Yu discovered that the helmet he got from Magneto could not only protect his mind from intrusion, but also help him stabilize his mind, which increased dozens of times after initially possessing the godhead. Mental strength. That's why Lu Yu still wears it when visiting bars. As for saying this, others will look at him in a strange way. Don't be ridiculous, Lu Yu. As a powerful man who controls divine power and the world's top richest man, would he care about what those insignificant people think of him? After listening to Lu Yu's words, the blonde saw that Lu Yu was not interested in her. Although she had already planned to find the next target, she felt a little reluctant and unwilling to accept Lu Yu, a handsome and wealthy man. How wonderful it would be to be taken care of by such a man. The blonde took out a notepad from his bag, tore out a page, and wrote a phone number on it. If you want to treat me to a meal and chat together, you can call me here. Lu Yu took the note, smiled very politely at the blonde and said, if I have time, I will. See you next time. The blonde waved to Lu Yu, then walked into the crowd on an exaggerated catwalk. The bartender at the bar is a thin young man with a somewhat delicate appearance, but he is far from the handsomeness of Lu Yu that people can remember at a glance. While he was mixing the wine, he kept glancing at the note in Lu Yu's hand with envy. Do you want this phone number? Lu Yu noticed this. He turned over the note in his hand with a nonchalant expression, and then handed it to the bartender. It just saves me the trouble of looking for the trash can time. Sir, don't you want to have something happen with that beautiful woman just now? The bartender waved his hand in surprise and did not take the note handed over by Lu Yu. She has already hinted very clearly that she wants to have sex with you. Enter, bed, sir. Maybe so, who cares? Lu Yu shook his shoulders. I just want you to throw it away for me. Whether it was Wendy or the other women Lu Yu had come into contact with, they were much better than the blonde just now, so how could Lu Yu possibly fall in love with her? Sir, you are really demanding. The bartender smiled bitterly and took the note and carefully put it into his pocket. Finally, he patted the pocket to ensure that it would not fall out. The requirements are high because my own conditions are good enough. Lu Yu raised his glass to the bartender and drank all the wine in one gulp. Used that note well, and I wish you success in hitting the bases. Lu Yu said this, stood up, and planned to leave the bar. As soon as he crossed the crowd and reached the door of the bar, he was stopped by a masked man who suddenly came out. The masked man grabbed Lu Yu's collar fiercely and said in a resentful tone, "Good guy, you must be Prince. Do you know that Uncle Deadpool, I was beaten into a sieve by a group of perverts in order to find you. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe." Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Chapter 36. The masked man wore a funny black and red costume and carried two long alloy knives wrapped in leather on his back. Although his face was covered by a hood of the same color as his clothes, Lu Yu knew that under the hood was a hideous and terrifying face that had been disfigured. The masked man's words have already revealed his identity. He is the world-famous talker in Marvel, Deadpool Wade. Deadpool was originally just a top international mercenary, proficient in the use of various weapons and fighting techniques on the battlefield. Suffering from a very serious cancer, Deadpool voluntarily accepted the Weapon X transformation program, thereby injecting the self-healing factor extracted from Wolverine's body into his body. Maybe he was An unlucky guy who was favored by God but was fooled. Although he miraculously survived the torture and awakened a recovery ability that was even more abnormal than Wolverine's, he was unable to recover from his ulcerated skin, which looked like he had been burned. After escaping from Stryker's base, Deadpool covered his whole body with a special uniform and traveled around the world to continue his mercenary career. He is not a supervillain, let alone a superhero. He is a miser who loves money more than himself. Whether it's to protect the Earth or create terrorist attacks, as long as you give Deadpool enough money, he will carry out your orders without any hesitation. To be honest, Liu Yu has always had an admiring attitude towards Deadpool. It's just appreciation, but it doesn't mean that Liu Yu can tolerate Deadpool being presumptuous in front of him. Liu Yu stretched out his hand to hold Deadpool's hand that was holding his collar. The terrifying grip force measured in tons suddenly burst out, and Deadpool's hand began to make soft sounds of broken bones. Wade, your mother didn't teach you what manners are. Liu Yu shook off Deadpool's hand that had turned into a ball of slime, chuckled and said, I'll teach you now. Oh my God, what did you do to my dear hand? Deadpool looked at his shattered hand in disbelief, with an exaggerated look of horror in his eyes. You know it's done to me. What does it mean? Do you know how many lonely nights it has accompanied me through? No? You don't know anything. Deadpool's tone was filled with even more exaggerated despair. He suddenly hugged his head with his hands that should have been disabled and knelt on the ground. You just ruined it. Kill ruthlessly. Get it? You are an executioner. Seeing the strange looks on the dance floor, Liu Yu could ignore it, but it still gave him a headache. Stryker didn't even sew your mouth shut. I really like you like that. He did sew it up. Deadpool's howling suddenly stopped. He got up from the ground and laughed proudly. Ha ha ha, it's just that I took it apart myself. No one can stop it. Uncle Deadpool speaks. One day, I'm going to sew his mouth shut. Use adamantium to sew it so that it can't be opened. Deadpool stared at Liu Yu seriously. It's just that now, someone is paying Uncle Deadpool to so you take it over. This is business, other things should be put behind this. Deadpool pulled out two swords from behind, frightening the surrounding crowd and scattered them. Do you want to follow me yourself, or let me cut you into pieces and then put them in a safe and take them away? I'm kidding, my employer is the only one who lives, and my customers are my god. Deadpool kicked a bartender who came over with a machete after hearing the news. Boom. Deadpool's body was not weak, and the bartender he kicked flew straight away and hit the pole where the stripper was dancing. The high-quality pole became distorted by the impact and shapeshifted. This is really hard to guess. I'll pay you a big price to hire you, but I won't let you kill me. Liu Yu frowned and was thinking hard, as if he didn't notice the movement around him, and let another bartender slash him with a knife on his arm. In an instant, blood spurted out like a fountain, and the smell of blood filled the air. A large amount of blood sprayed on the bartender's face, causing a ferocious smile to appear on the bartender's face. Boy, I regret making trouble here. You seem to be very happy. Liu Yu's expression did not change at all. He calmly raised his arm that had been chopped off by the bartender, and pinched the bartender's face with his hand. Under his terrifying strength, the bartender could not make any more movements. Was involuntarily led by Liu Yu and knelt on the ground. I think you should learn to share joy with others. How can this be? The bartender was horrified to see the blood on the ground floating into the air from the corner of his eye, and poured into Liu Yu's bloody arm. He began to feel the blood of Liu Yu on his face flowing along Liu Yu's arm and quickly flowing back into Liu Yu's body. As all the blood returned to Liu Yu's body, the wounds on Liu Yu's arms rolled over, and then Liu Yu's hands returned to their original appearance. Bang! Mutant. The knife in the bartender's hand fell to the ground feebly. His wide eyes seemed to see the devil in hell, filled with unspeakable and huge fear. Learn from me and know how to share the joy of death with you. The black aura in the invisible world spurted out from the palm of Liu Yu's hand holding the bartender's face, like a flower blooming, and instantly enveloped the bartender's face. The bartender's body began to shake crazily, the muscles on his face began to shrink rapidly, and the blood vessels protruded, and then this change spread to the whole body. Unlike a strong man like Magneto, taking away the life of an ordinary person is very easy for Liu Yu now. In less than 10 seconds, the bartender's entire body turned into a mummy. As soon as Liu Yu let go of his hand, he fell to the ground. The dry and fragile head was broken into many small pieces, making a crisp sound. You don't have to guess. I can tell you this directly. I don't have any annoying confidentiality rules. Deadpool looked at Lu Yu a few times in surprise. He was not surprised that Lu Yu could quickly take away the bartender's vitality, but he did not expect that Lu Yu could have such abnormal recovery power without the self-healing factor in his body. Yes, Deadpool clearly saw that Lu Yu is not the rapid healing of wounds, but direct repair and remodeling, just like every cell has memory and life. A blue-skinned woman, she is simply the best bed partner, and can be anything you want. By the way, how did you provoke her? Is it because she didn't pay you for sleeping with her? I really envy you. I also want to sleep with her, but she is my employer. I can't force her to sleep with me. Deadpool suddenly bent down to avoid the attack of a strong man. Sneak attack, his mouth kept talking. Mystique. Lu Yu suddenly understood why the person who hired Deadpool did not ask Deadpool to kill him, but to live. I think after you know her age, you will definitely give up the idea of sleeping with her. Lu Yu killed Magneto, the leader of the Mutant Brotherhood. And Mystique, who had a close relationship with Magneto, naturally hated him. Mystique wanted to catch Lu Yu and use various cruel methods to torture Lu Yu, hoping that Lu Yu would die in extreme pain. Many gang members dressed in black gradually appeared around. These people were armed with various firearms. They vigilantly aimed their guns at Lu Yu and Deadpool. Facing dozens of gunshots, Lu Yu didn't panic at all. He turned his head and raised a smile at the corner of Deadpool's mouth. Deadpool, as punishment for your rude remarks to me, you will accompany them into my territory for a visit. As soon as he finished speaking, a gray light suddenly appeared in Lu Yu's eyes, and a large amount of black deathly energy flowed out of Lu Yu's eyes, quickly permeating the entire bar, including Deadpool. The consciousness of everyone else in the bar sank. A pair of giant gray eyes full of indifference and majesty suddenly appeared in their minds. Chapter 37. Even with how crazy Deadpool was, when he saw dozens of mummies lying on the ground, he felt a chill on his back. These mummies seemed to have experienced countless painful things before dying, and their wrinkled faces still maintained the expressions of fear and terror they had during their lifetimes. Some even maintained their last movements, crawling towards the bar door. On their raised heads, the pair of eye sockets that had lost their eyes looked straight at the world outside the gate. The hands raised toward the door show that at the last moment, they were still longing to escape from hell to the world of life. Fortunately, Uncle Deadpool has the self-healing function, otherwise he would have to meet the goddess of death right now. Deadpool swallowed a mouthful of saliva, recalling everything he experienced in the illusion, and couldn't help but feel a little fear in his heart. Everything that happened in that fantasy was the most terrifying nightmare he had ever experienced in his life. Even if he was asked to go back and go through dozens of weapon modification projects, Deadpool didn't want to relive such a nightmare. It doesn't matter that the damage received in the illusion will be synchronized to reality. He has the abnormal ability to self-heal even if he is chopped into pulp, and he is not afraid of others hurting him physically. But the feeling of being deprived of time, space, quality matter, and even the concept of the entire world. It almost makes people feel that even despair is a luxury that cannot be granted. Are you talking about the goddess of death? Lu Yu's voice suddenly sounded from behind Deadpool. Deadpool was so frightened that he grabbed the knife and slashed it behind him without any hesitation. The tachi made by adamantium, after rubbing with the air, made tearing air sounds like shishi and slashed straight at Lu Yu. Click. The tachi passed through Lu Yu's body without any hindrance, just like cutting into a piece of tofu. But Deadpool didn't feel relaxed because of this. On the contrary, he was shocked, and the pupils in his eyes suddenly shrank to a needle-like file size. The tachi cut through Lu Yu's body as if it had been cut into water. As a top mercenary, Deadpool knows exactly what it would feel like if his weapon cut open a human body. No one's body is like running water, it has no focus at all. Recalling that when Lu Yu was stabbed by the bartender with a machete, Lu Yu's arm could quickly repair itself, and Deadpool had a bad premonition in his heart. That kid was definitely not harmed by his knife. Deadpool took a few steps back, trying to get away. Pounce. At this moment, Lu Yu suddenly smiled strangely, and his body suddenly collapsed. When it was about to touch the ground, it suddenly collapsed into a pile of black sand and fell to the ground. What are you doing? Performing magic or acrobatics for Uncle Deadpool? Deadpool looked around and thought about retreating. Facing Lu Yu's endless methods, he has understood that Lu Yu is not something he can deal with. Deadpool felt that compared to losing a sum of money, he didn't want to be dragged into that weird world again by Lu Yu. There is simply no place for a lunatic like him to stay. I suddenly remembered that I have something urgent at home. Sorry, I'll come to your show next time. Deadpool said a word and hurried towards the door. Zizi, the black sand formed by Lu Yu, was like a black python, quickly running towards Deadpool on the ground, making a slight sound as it flowed. Deadpool is very fast, but Haisha is even faster than him. After Haisha caught up with Deadpool, he immediately wrapped his arms around Deadpool's feet and used Deadpool's legs as a ladder. He kept turning and slowly climbed up Deadpool's body. Hey, you can't do this. I just took a shower yesterday. You damn guy, do you know how expensive shower gel is in the United States? Deadpool hurriedly slapped the black sand on his body, trying to knock it off to the ground, but his actions had no effect at all. Black sand clings to Deadpool like crisscrossing vines. The end of Deadpool's body, where the black sand first climbed up, began to change, extending to Deadpool's eyes, turning into a face made of black sand and facing Deadpool's eyes. This face is very similar to Lu Yu, but it is ferocious, like a devil. The devil's face is the squirming black sand, and its eyes are made of gray divinity, like peerless gems flashing with gray light. When Deadpool looked at the pair of gems, he seemed to see a desolation filled with deathly silence inside. He could vaguely hear the screams of the innocent souls wandering inside. Let me out. No, I don't want to be here. Who can help me? There is no goddess of death here. Lu Yu's voice through the devil's face was very hoarse with an extremely disdainful smile. There is only another stronger god of death here. Wait. Lu Yu called Deadpool by his name. I want you to go back and find Mystique, and then bring him to me. I admit that you look a little like Death God. Faced with such a strange scene, Deadpool calmed down quickly. I don't care if you are a real Death God or a fake Death God. If you want me to work, even God has to pay me. Deadpool's love for money has penetrated deep into his bones. Before betraying, it's very unethical for an employer to do this, but as long as you give me 100 million, I'll do it. I won't give you a penny, I will give you something better than money. Lu Yu's voice was very low, with a special magic. Lu Yu is planning a big thing, and he currently lacks people he can trust. Deadpool's abilities in all aspects are very good, and he is a good candidate to help him execute his plan. And when it comes to controlling Deadpool's loyalty, he has a more reliable means than money. Then we have nothing to talk about. Deadpool's words were very strong. He was not worried about his safety at all. In his opinion, Lu Yu could not kill him. To me, only money is the best thing in the world. Regain your handsome appearance. Lu Yu was not annoyed by Deadpool's attitude. He knew what Deadpool longed for. His voice was full of temptation. Isn't this even better than the US dollar? Without waiting for Deadpool to answer, the black sand formed by Lu Yu flowed onto Deadpool's gloved left hand. After corrupting Deadpool's glove, it wrapped around Deadpool's palm and emitted a gray light. This is a deposit. Do 10 things for me, and I will return you to your original appearance. The black sand all returned to the ground from Deadpool, gathered together and stood up, transforming into Lu Yu's human form again. His voice was like Satan tempting people to fall into hell, full of deception. Looking at the smooth and normal skin of his palms, Deadpool's eyes shined with unprecedented brilliance. Make a deal. Chapter 38. Wulong, Wulong, Wulong. Hearing the noise coming from outside the bar, Lu Yu looked out from the window. More and more police cars and armed personnel were constantly surrounding the entire bar. These useless police officers, with their useless weapons, will never arrive until it's over, Lu Yu said sarcastically to Deadpool, and then took a bottle of rum from the cabinet of the bar with a leisurely expression. He pressed his hand on the mouth of the bottle, and the entire glass at the mouth of the bottle shattered and flew out. Lu Yu thought a little funny in her heart, wondering if the young bartender still had the courage to use the note given by Lu Yu to date the blonde after what happened today. Picking up a goblet, Lu Yu slowly poured the wine into the glass and walked towards the fire escape. Although Lu Yu has been very low-key in recent years, not many people can recognize his face. But after all, he is one of the top richest men in the United States, and he holds a large number of shares in many well-known groups. A well-known public figure is not suitable at all to be the protagonist in such a chaotic situation. Lu Yu is not afraid of the police in New York. He just feels that there is no need to get involved in trouble. These small characters that will waste his precious time can be left to Deadpool to deal with. Deadpool, don't let me down, I'm waiting for your good news. After speaking, Liu Yu raised his glass to Deadpool with a smile and drank the wine in one gulp. Promise to complete the mission, boss. Deadpool's voice sounded very excited. Being able to restore his original appearance and no longer become a mouse who can only survive wearing a mask, he felt that this was simply like God showing mercy to him, allowing him to once again raise long-lost expectations for the future. If Liu Yu knew Deadpool's thoughts, he would definitely remind Deadpool sternly that this was not a gift from God, but the favor of Death God. The double knives made of adamantium threw a beautiful blade in the air, and were then put back on his back by Deadpool. He threw all the money he plundered from the bar into a sack and kicked open the door of the bar. Little cats and dogs, what do you want to do to greet your Uncle Deadpool with a hail of bullets? Wow! The wine glasses and bottles collided with the ground and shattered into countless broken glasses, scattered on the ground. A gloomy wind carried countless black particles and floated outside from the fire escape. When Liu Yu was active again, he had already appeared in his own Porsche supercar not far from the bar. Turning his head and glancing at Deadpool, who was being beaten by the police and running around more than 200 meters away, Liu Yu's mouth turned up slightly. He put sunglasses on his eyes and started the sports car. The night in New York is very fascinating. Even in such a late night, the whole city still looks colorful, and there is an endless stream of pedestrians on the road. Porsche's limited edition sports car draws a cool line on the road and attracts the envious eyes of countless people. Liu Yu held the steering wheel with her hands and fell into thinking. Letting Deadpool catch Mystique to him was not a decision made by Liu Yu on a whim because he wanted to take revenge on Mystique for hiring someone to kidnap him. He is preparing for the future. Mystique's gene is the key to perfecting Sentinel, although now the research organization whose name he cannot remember has obtained Mystique's gene and started secret research. But it will be a long time before those people actually achieve breakthrough results and create Sentinel. If Liu Yu can also obtain Mystique's gene, then with the huge assets he now has, he will be able to set up a cutting-edge laboratory to conduct research specifically on Mystique's gene. Although Liu Yu did not know any biological experts because he had been studying at Xavier's school, this did not hinder his idea of a cutting-edge laboratory at all. As long as you have money in this world, there will be countless experts and professors vying to serve you. What's more, he already has a suitable candidate in mind, Helen Zhao from the Age of Ultron, a doctor with excellent abilities. The powerful and terrifying thing about Sentinel is that it can adjust its attributes at any time according to the enemy it fights, so that it can always maintain attribute restraint against the enemy. If an anti-Sentinel device can be developed to address this, then Mutant's doomsday future will become a bubble that will burst at the touch of a button. Not long after he had just killed Charles's old gay friend Magneto, Liu Yu was still worried about what reason to use to capture Mystique because of Charles's favor. Unexpectedly, Mystique actually sent this reason to Liu Yu. How could Liu Yu choose to miss it? He found an honest reason to take action against Mystique, and by the way, he also recruited Deadpool, a man with good abilities, to help him do this. This made Liu Yu feel very good. Everything was going in the direction he planned without encountering any difficulties. As for the question of Deadpool only doing 10 things for him, Liu Yu said very nonchalantly that the restrictive request he put forward was just to make Deadpool more motivated to work. Will the new body given to the creature by the Death God be so useful? From the moment Deadpool agreed to this deal, he was destined to work for Liu Yu for the rest of his life. And what is very tragic is that if Liu Yu is willing, his life will never end. How lonely it is to be invincible. Liu Yu turned the steering wheel and turned onto the highway. He couldn't help humming the song, using the English version he adapted. Boom! Suddenly, in front of Liu Yu, a giant behemoth fell from the sky, instantly smashing several cars that could not dodge to pieces. Chapter 39. This sudden accident caught all the cars on the highway off guard. There were constant sounds of rear-end collisions, accompanied by people screaming and shouting, and the scene became very chaotic for a while. What the hell is going on today? Why are all these bad things happening on this day? Liu Yu couldn't help but complain. His Porsche was very close to the falling piece of iron, and he was driving very fast. It was too late to brake. He had to turn the steering wheel quickly to avoid the falling piece of iron. Big Iron block on the road. In a not-so-pretty drift, Lu Yu's Porsche body rubbed against the surface of the big iron block, causing sparks to fly, making a harsh friction sound, and slid to the side of the big iron block. At this moment, an iron hand of huge amounts suddenly stretched out from under the big iron block and grabbed the Porsche supercar together with Lu Yu. The big iron block held up the other hand and slowly stood up from the ground. After stretching out, it turned out to be a huge iron robot. I think you should put down that car in your hand. A gold and red individual mecha flew down from the sky, with flames spurting from its feet and staying in midair. Looking at the Porsche supercar captured by the iron robot, the man controlling the individual mecha couldn't help but frown. Because when he saw the person sitting in the supercar, he didn't even look flustered at all. Instead, he was very calm and smiled at him through the car window and said, "Hello, Iron Man Tony." "Hello, Stark." From the mouth of the man in the car, the man operating the individual mecha, Iron Man Tony, read what the man in the car said. J.A.R.V.I.S. Search the internet for the person in the car. I need to know his information. Tony curiously issued an order to his personal smart computer JARVIS. He really wanted to know what kind of support the person who greeted him with a smile had in this situation, so that he could be so calm in the face of danger. "Okay, sir." J.A.R.V.I.S.'s magnetic voice rang in Tony's ears less than 2 seconds later. Prince Kane is 18 years old, and his parents are ordinary citizens living in New York. When he was 10 years old, his X gene was awakened and he was taken to Mutant Academy by Charles Francis Xavier. The mutant ability is suspected to be related to the Yellow Sand, but the details are unknown. Prince Kane currently holds huge shares in many large groups, including Stark Industries. He is one of the world's top invisible rich men. And he also is the big-name shareholder on our Stark Industries board of directors who never comes to meetings. Tony interrupted J.A.R.V.I.S.'s report, opened his mouth and asked in surprise, "It sounds like he is richer than me." "Yes, sir. I estimate that Prince's net worth is about 4 times that of yours." J.A.R.V.I.S.'s voice is still the same gentle tone. "It is just a smart computer, not an intelligent life. Well, compared to him, I look like a pauper." Although Tony said this, there was no envy in his tone. Money isn't Tony Stark's greatest asset, his inventive mind is. "Obadiah, let me remind you again, put down the car in your hand." Tony's tone was a little more serious. "The person sitting inside is the major shareholder of our group." "Really? I'm so lucky to grab a car and the person in the car is actually the major shareholder of our group." The big villain in Iron Man, Obadiah, controls the iron hand of the iron robot. With such force, the doors on both sides of the supercar were instantly deformed by him. Obadiah, who was focused on Tony, didn't notice that under the cover of night, countless black particles floated out from the shattered glass window of the supercar. J.A.R.V.I.S. scanned this and reported the situation to Tony. Tony, who already knew that Lu Yu was a mutant, just nodded slightly, still looking at Obadiah calmly on the surface. "Since he is a shareholder, he should die with you." Obadiah roared and threw the supercar in his hand heavily towards Tony in the air. The supercar kept rolling in the air, and after Tony quickly dodged it, it hit a viaduct behind Tony. Boom! After the supercar hit the viaduct, the entire body suffered severe shapeshifting. After falling tragically to the ground, there was a deafening explosion. Various broken parts flew everywhere, leaving only a pile of black wreckage. "Now that he has left before you, it's your turn next," Obadiah said arrogantly. "As long as all of you are dead, I will always have the final say in the entire Stark group. You actually said you were lucky to have caught my car." Lu Yu's voice suddenly sounded on the iron robot's shoulder. "I'm curious how much water went into your brain to make you say this kind of words." Chapter 40. Countless black sand fell from the air, gathered on the shoulders of the iron robot, and changed into the shape of a person. Tisk, mutant. Tony witnessed this scene with his own eyes. The J.A.R.V.I.S. screen displayed the data report after analyzing the black sand. He couldn't help but sigh and said, "This is indeed an extremely magical race." Tony didn't know that the ability to elementalize oneself was not Lu Yu's mutant ability, but the power Lu Yu inherited from the death god Anubis. "You damn insect!" Obadiah roared angrily and reached out to grab his shoulder. I'm going to push your body to the ground and crush it completely. Obadiah's words were full of momentum. This fighting iron robot seemed to give him unparalleled confidence, making him think that he was now in an invincible state. Hoo-ho! The power of the iron robot is as huge as its body size. The iron hand, which is as big as a heavy truck and has a file size, grabs Lu Yu with a fierce roar of air. Iron Hand's speed can be said to be very fast, but that is only compared to ordinary people. And Lu Yu is obviously not among the ranks of ordinary people. Facing the oncoming Iron Shao, the gray light in Lu Yu's eyes flashed, and he jumped at the moment when the Iron Shao was about to catch him, easily dodging the Iron Shao's attack. Seizing the right moment when the Iron Hand stopped at the shoulder of the tin robot, Lu Yu stepped on the Iron Hand with a fierce kick, using the Iron Hand as a springboard to reach the head of the tin robot. Your brain is indeed flooded, let me help you repair it. Lu Yu's arms were surrounded by file-sized black aura between his palms, and he pressed hard on the head of the Iron Robot. The entire head of the Iron Robot made of super alloy began to be quickly corroded by black aura, but it became rusty in an instant. What did you do? Get off my body. The iron hand of the Iron Robot moved towards his head again, and its driver Obadiah's voice was full of rage and panic. Obadiah didn't have a view above his head, so he didn't know what Lu Yu was doing. But he saw from the operation interface that the armor value of the tin robot's head was losing at a high speed. At this rate, his operation room will be exposed to Lu Yu in less than 10 seconds. Obadiah, it seems that you are better at causing trouble than I am. Tony's steel armor stopped in the air without making any movement, but he said with a tone full of schadenfreude, after me, you caused another one. Big trouble. Obadiah was in no mood to pay attention to Tony's taunts. After another attack aimed at his head was dodged by Lu Yu, he was so angry that he hit his head against a building. Lu Yu seemed to be unaware of Obadiah's behavior. He took the death energy back into his body and used his hands to lift off the fragile and corroded iron sheet, revealing the crisscrossing lines in it. Boom! The moment the Iron Robot collided with the building, there was a violent sound. All of a sudden, the masonry kept collapsing, causing dust to fly all over the sky, obscuring the figure of the Iron Robot. The huge impact of hitting the building did not stop Lu Yu. Before the masonry shattered and splashed on him, he stretched out his hand and pulled out several red lines as thick as his arms. Small barrel? Ammunition? There are also some messy parts. Lu Yu disassembled all these and threw them out, making a crackling sound when they fell to the ground. After several black smoke and sparks erupted from the inside of the Iron Robot's head, Lu Yu finally saw the circular operating room hidden in the innermost part. Warning! Warning! Damage to the head system. Warning! Warning! Damage to the head system. Damn mutant! Damn you bastard! On the display screen in front of Obadiah's eyes, a red alert kept flashing, making him curse in horror and annoyance. A large amount of sweat was dripping from his head, and he began to realize the seriousness of the problem. The damn mutant outside was very likely to be dismantled directly into the operation room. Thinking of this, Obadiah hurriedly opened the secret compartment of the operation room and took out the special handgun he had prepared there before. The gun was given to him by one of his partners, and it can temporarily suppress the X gene of the mutants. Lu Yu leaned half of his body into the head of the Iron Robot, and held the closed iron door of the operation room with both hands. The veins on his arms stood out, and the terrifying power contained in his muscles burst out instantly. Open it for me! Lu Yu shouted loudly, his black hair dancing wildly, and all his strength gathered on his arms under his movement. The iron door of the operating room is not made of high-strength alloy like the iron sheet outside. Under Lu Yu's inhuman strength, the ordinary iron door of the operating room began to slowly shapeshift, and the place where Lu Yu held it with both hands it has been severely dented. As the iron door was slowly opened little by little, Lu Yu saw from the gap the size of a file the width of his palm. Obadiah was raising his head with a grin, holding a gun tremblingly at him. Boom! Gunshots ring out. A silver-white bullet hit Lu Yu immediately, leaving a bullet hole in Lu Yu's forehead. Ha ha ha, die, you mutant! Obadiah shouted with a mixture of madness and joy. What are you talking about? Lu Yu supported the iron door with both hands, lowered his head slightly, and the bullet fell from his forehead. When Lu Yu raised his head again, the hole left by the bullet began to get smaller, and finally returned to its original stayed under Obadiah's horrified gaze. "You are smiling so happily, do you think you are killing me?" Lu Yu's voice was very plain, but when he heard it in Obadiah's ears, it made him freeze there, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. It was extremely cold. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.